Welcome to part 2 of our video presentation on chapter 15. In this and subsequent parts, we will talk about the specific social issues that information and communication technologies often give birth to when information and communication technologies are used in an organizational context and also by individuals. In this part 2, we will talk about privacy issues. And then in subsequent parts, we'll talk about identity theft and intellectual property rights. So what is privacy? Now, here's one textbook definition of privacy. It's the ability to control access to information about ourselves. In other words, for most individuals, there is a type of information about themselves that they're willing to release to others, and there is certain information that they would like to keep to themselves without people knowing about it. For example, it can be something related to their health issues or health records. Some people they believe it's something that is personal. They are also embarrassed by the fact that other people know about their health issues, so therefore they would like to keep this information to themselves. So, as I said, an individual might give permission to collect and use certain personal information in exchange for some benefits or business transactions. However, privacy is invaded, in other words, individuals are typically outraged when information is used in ways the individual never intended or explicitly agreed to, especially if it's something related to this information that they want to keep private. Okay, so they are willing to give up some of that privacy, some of the information in relation for a fair compensation, but there's some information that they're not willing to give out to third parties, even in exchange for a reward. And if this information is still giving out, despite the fact that the customers did not intend this information to be public, and there's no compensation, then there's typically a public privacy scandal. So why is privacy a business issue? Well, personal information, I'm talking about information about consumers, can be extremely valuable to marketers and many companies spend significant funds to obtain it. Because if you know something about customer preferences, about their demographics, and if those variables can predict purchasing intentions of customers, then it can be very valuable for organizations in terms of boosting their sales and profitability. And that's why credit cards, customer loyalty cards, warranty cards, and all kinds of sweepstakes, they're largely tools for collecting personal information. They're not really intended to, improve customer satisfaction. Their main intent is to collect information. For example, if you have a credit card and you're using your credit card for different products in different stores, you're using it also for shopping online, then a lot can be said about your location, about your preferences, meaning what kind of products you like, what kind of companies you like, and so forth. And this information can be extremely valuable for other vendors, other companies. So it's very valuable. Now, in the United States, the opinion on consumer privacy is a bit split. 25% of individuals are not concerned with privacy issues. 50% have healthy commercial attitude towards privacy. They're willing to consider trading some personal privacy for other benefits, and 25% are quite sensitive to loss of privacy. In other words, they take this position that certain information should be private no matter what, and privacy has to be protected no matter what. Now, unfortunately, the growth of information technology, especially of the World Wide Web, has increased the potential for privacy violation. So one method in which privacy is violated is through the collection of cookies. Now, what is a cookie? It's a small file created by a web browser that can identify the user to a particular website. So when you visit a particular website, let's say ESPN.com, they create a file, and this file is called a cookie. So they create this cookie file on your machine. And this cookie file contains information about your interaction with a particular website. Now, in a way, this cookie file does not identify you directly. In other words, there's no way for a website without any external source of information to know who you are, meaning your name, your address. However, in a sense, they know who you are. I mean, they know that you're a user with a particular code, and being this user, you like visiting certain websites at certain times of the day. You like looking at certain content. So all those things, they can reveal a lot of information about you. Now combine this with your name, and then you have a complete profile, about your browsing behavior online. Now, uh, some companies they use it, I guess, in an ethical way. I mean, like for example, Amazon.com uses cookies to identify users and then deliver personalized content based on the user's prior purchases. So they use those cookies to create a better recommendation engine for customers. So it doesn't seem to be like necessarily something bad. But again, sometimes users are concerned that once you compile this information from different sources, then you can deduct the most intimate details about somebody's life, and that's what they're concerned about. They're not really concerned about Amazon making recommendations based on the data. They're concerned that other sensitive information can be leaked as a result of those data collection activities. There's one company that has been extremely controversial. The company's name was DoubleClick.com. That's exactly what the company was specializing in. They were placing cookies on computers of web surfers, and then they would use those cookies to create a very comprehensive profile about individual users. So they've been doing it for a number of years. They had been doing it for a number of years. There were a lot of privacy concerns. Things became worse when DoubleClick started merging with other companies that have other databases about consumers. So the more information you combine together, the more likely that you will identify who that particular user is, meaning the exact name and address of that person. And also the higher the chances that you'll be able to kind of tap into the most intimate thoughts and intentions of that individual. Things became especially controversial in 2007 when Google purchased DoubleClick. There was this belief that when you combine information from DoubleClick and Google search queries and Gmail profile information, it will be a big privacy issues. As it turned out, those concerns were quite valid, because in 2006, AOL.com it released a sample of queries of individuals so that the public can do research about search queries, like what are the things that people are looking for, how to optimize or improve search algorithms, and so forth. I think they released like roughly half a gig of those queries, and in a way they tried to protect privacy of those individuals. So they didn't publish usernames, so they used like those randomly generated codes. So instead of having like a AOL username attached to a particular set of search queries, meaning the things that people searched through AOL search engine, they just replaced it with a random number. Now, as it turned out, that didn't work, meaning masking usernames with random numbers did not help protect identity of users, because as you know, some people sometimes they search for things within their location. For example, they can keep searching best pizza in Murray, Kentucky, or cinemas in near Murray, Kentucky. So all those queries will relieve the location of the individual. And sometimes people search for people with certain last name for their relatives that can tell you what their last name is. And sometimes people perform the so-called ego searches, where they search for their own name to see what's available on them online. So if you combine all those things, not only you can identify people, you can also tap into their most intimate intentions. For example, if somebody has a health problem, they will not necessarily share it with other people. However, they may do a Google search or AOL.com search about this particular health condition, right? So when all this information was released, people, first of all, they could quickly sometimes figure out who that particular user was. But most importantly, there were like all those searches that involve searching for something that is illegal. For example, there are people who apparently search to buy legal substances, right? They're saying where to buy a certain substance around Murray, Kentucky, for example, right? So those things, they attract attention of law enforcement agencies. There are some people who are searching for things that seem to be related to terrorism or intention to commit a serious crime. Of course, it's not guaranteed, like if somebody's searching for like how to hide a dead body. I mean, you don't know how to interpret that. I mean, maybe he's just doing research for a particular project, or maybe he's indeed interested in hiding a dead body. I mean, who knows? But nevertheless, it was a huge scandal, huge controversy involving AOL itself, users, a number of consumer privacy advocates, lawyers, and eventually there were like several legislation acts proposed as a result of that security breach by AOL. Facebook is also becoming a big ticking privacy bomb, because they collect so much information about people, about their travels, about their social groups and affiliation. As of now, they're using this information to target their ads, to make money through advertisement. However, the original policy was that the information would not, their original privacy policy was that the information would be shared only within the user's group of friends. but they keep changing their privacy policy. So nowadays, nobody's 100% sure how this information will be used down the road, right? So what if they start passing this information to law enforcement agencies or selling this information to third-party organizations like marketing companies? So a lot of people view Facebook as a ticking privacy bomb. Spyware is another privacy issue nowadays. What happens is that sometimes when you install a free software, there is an add-on to it that monitors your behavior online. It monitors, what kind of websites you're visiting, and in order to get this free software, you need to agree that this spyware will be installed. So it's something that's borderline. I mean, it's not necessarily legal because you have the right to offer users this kind of deal where you give a software for free in exchange for certain information about them. But a lot of people, they view it as unethical. For example, in the old days, when you install Google Bar, that had a number of interesting applications like Search Bar, they would ask you, well, would you like this Google Bar to send certain information about you, or would you allow it to use some of the processing capacity of your computer for a certain project? So I think it's not unethical to do this as long as you as a company is very explicit about the spyware. You're not trying to hide the fact that a certain type of spyware will be installed on someone's computer. Workplace privacy is another issue in the digital age. Outside of the financial industry, there are no laws in the United States regulating the collection and sharing of personal data. So it's as of now, oftentimes legislature leaves it up to the organizations, how to protect and how to define employee privacy. Now, in general, most corporations, they monitor their employee behavior. They randomly check their emails or instant messages because there is that belief that corporations have the right to employee time, and because of that, they have the right to view employee email messages. It seems like a valid argument. Indeed, if you're paying an employee to do something, then you have the right to see like what he is doing or she is doing and whether the time is being used wisely. Nevertheless, managers should understand that those kind of actions sometimes they're not illegal, but they can potentially violate employee personal privacy and they can result in negative use of the company. A lot of employees, they don't really intend to do something illegal or unethical during their working hours, but they're just not comfortable with the fact that their employer is monitoring their emails or their behavior online. Now, in response to all those privacy issues, online and offline, created by information technology, a number of privacy laws have been passed. For example, there is the so-called Fair Credit Reporting Act, regulates disclosure of credit application data and credit histories. Basically, this act says that you as an individual have the right to know your credit history, so I think you're eligible to at least one free credit report. The Privacy Act, applicable to government bodies, restricts a government agency from gathering information for one purpose and using it for another or sharing it with another agency. The Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, something that all people who are somehow related to the education industry are familiar with. It basically protects the privacy of students by restricting access to their grade and disciplinary information. So, and there are all kinds of other privacy acts that have been passed in the United States. One that is very important nowadays is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, the so-called HIPAA Act. It protects an individual personal health information from unauthorized disclosure. All healthcare organizations need to comply with that, and it's a big deal, like compliance and employee training on HIPAA Act. Now, also privacy laws differ depending on the country. Like in the United States, privacy laws, in a way, they're less, for example, they're less restrictive than privacy laws in European countries. So, for example, in the United States, there's this provision that privacy can be violated in exchange for some compensation. In other words, it kind of stimulates that use of individual data for commerce. In the European Union, it seems to be a bit more restrictive. So companies operating across the borders, they need to understand that there is different privacy legislation in different countries, and what's applicable in one country, what flies in one country may not necessarily be legal and well accepted in another country. So something that makes privacy laws a bit complicated. Okay, so this completes part 2 of our video presentation on chapter 15. Thank you for listening.